The work the SAG Foundation is doing is enormously important. From the up-and-coming actors to the veterans like myself, the foundation is here to help all of us.
As fellow artists, we've all been there. It's crucial that we remember where we came from and help out however we can.
For over 25 years, the SAG Foundation has been the industry's best-kept secret, and we're out to change that.
As natural storytellers, it's great that we have the opportunity to give back through the Children's Literacy Program.
A disaster like Sandy really brings it home with how crucial the SAG Foundation is. Their donation drive helped so many people in need.
The seminars and workshops are crucial. Working together is what makes us better.
The SAG Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies solely on donations to keep these important programs free for everyone.
The SAG Foundation can't do it alone. We need you.
If you need help, ask.
If you can help, give.
We're all in this together.
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 Together, everyone benefits.
Join the cause.
Act now.
Good evening once again. Welcome to you guys in the audience. Welcome to everyone that's watching across the U.S. and beyond on the live stream. We thank you for being here. We thank you for watching for what to be excited part 2 of our series with the LA Stage Alliance. We're so glad they partnered with us. And actually, also we want to give a shout out to the Stage Directors and Choreographers Foundation for also assisting us specifically with this panel. So both of them, give them a hand. Couple things before we get started. We at the SAG Foundation are trying to be social media conscious, so we're on Facebook and Twitter and all such things, so please follow us to get information. The one I specifically want to talk about is our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SAG Foundation. We try to be conscious that we are a national organization, so we not only serve LA members, but also all the members across the nation. So we want to provide this content online for people to access, and also for you guys to go home and rewatch and share amongst your friends who can't be here tonight. So what we ask you to do is that if you can go home, share that video out, share it with your friends who not only live in LA but beyond, just to show that what we're trying to do is for everyone. So we ask you to be conscious of that and doing that. Also, it's a great chance if you missed something that they said, you can go back and rewatch. As soon as the event's over, it's up for you to go home and watch it and catch something that you missed that they were saying tonight. So please do that. Last, we are a nonprofit, which means we function on grants and donations, which for the SAG-AFTRA members in the room, that means we do not get your dues or initiation fees. That's a misnomer, so I want to repeat that for everyone. We do not get your dues, we do not get your initiation fees. So what we ask is if you have a couple bucks, it would be great if you can send it our way through the donate button on the website or by cash when we have our cash box. The way to think about it is each seat for each event for Conversations, Life Raft, and CAP cost us $17. So for every time you're here, it's $17. So if you pitch in $5 a month, probably the best deal in town that I know, especially in LA when things are kind of expensive. Also, another thing we're conscious of is we do have emergency assistance. So if you need some help that way, you can give us a call and there's a process to go through. So the money you also donate might help the person next to you pay that phone bill for another month and things like that, because we know as actors, work ebbs and flows. So we try to assist with that. So I hope you're excited for tonight. We're going to have a great event. So let's first have Terrence McFarland from LA Stage Alliance, the CEO, come up, and he'll start the evening off. Give him a hand.
Yeah, come on up, guys. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Yeah. Sort of stepped on that applause. That's like we're off to a really good start on the directing, right? Maybe I should like stand and like pull focus in front of them, right? Do something like that. With my back to the audience. As Dennis said, I'm Terrence McFarland. I'm CEO of LA Stage Alliance, and we are a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1975 dedicated to building awareness, appreciation, and support for the performing arts community of Greater LA. Our probably biggest or highest profile program are the Ovation Awards, which is coming up November 3rd. Please join us. We're going to be at the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. And we're thrilled to partner with SDC and SAG Foundation on tonight, which is the second part of our panel series, with directors who are crafting lives in TV, film, and theater. And our conversation tonight will be about their worlds, how they came to be sort of in their current roles, the highs, the lows, the ebbs, the flows, all of that. But to start, I'm going to have them each introduce themselves and give a little bit of what your path was to where you are today. Maybe we'll start on the far end, Oz.
No, I thought
Do you like how I did that?
I dodged that bullet.
My name is Oz Scott. I started
I started as a stage manager, though I've acted when I got mad at an actor and told him to get lost, and you got to do it all. I worked at Arena Stage for a company called Living Stage, where I stage managed for 2 years, which I think really helped shape me in a lot of ways because Bob Alexander, who ran Living Stage, would give us 8 weeks, 6 days a week of improvisational workshop training, and then we took it out onto the streets, and I was the stage manager, and I had to give notes to the actors, and it was always interesting giving notes to improv actors saying, I didn't feel it. Where'd that come from? And I think it really helped in my training, and when I went on to New York and I did For Colored Girls, I probably used a lot of those techniques in developing For Colored Girls, because For Colored Girls was a bunch of poems when it was given to me, and Tazaki said, here, make a play out of it. And I kept saying, well, what do you think, what do you think? She said, I have no idea what you're doing, just keep doing it. And so that's, For Colored Girls, we went December in a bar on the Lower East Side to Henry Street in March, to the Public Theater in June 2nd, and on my birthday we opened on Broadway. So it was a real whirlwind, really great. After that, I was stage, and I was down in New Orleans working on a documentary when Universal called and asked me, we have a film starring Richard Pryor and Cicely Tyson. Would you be interested in directing it? And the one thing I learned in school was I have to read the script. Of course, when I hung the phone up, I started screaming. My wife said, what's the matter? I got a film, I got a film. So I did Busting Loose with them. And then television. And television was very interesting because getting into television, you had to really, I got Michael Warren, who was on Hill Street Blues, to introduce me to the producers, and I said, I want to learn. Now, I'd already done a major motion picture, but so I stood there for about 2 months, following the directors, learning, listening, being there, saying, wow, how'd you do that shot? So I was trying to play the game and be part of it, and they finally one day said, hey, Oz, we had a director fallout, would you be interested in doing it next week? And so, so there was each time, it was a process. And each time, the first one, when I started at Living Stage, I was sweeping up. That was my job. And it was like the stage manager fell out. Hey, Oz, what are you doing? You want to stage manage? And you want to become Actors Equity. So 19, here I am saying, yeah, I'll do that. And it's just, I don't want to say it's luck. I think it's really just being in there and sticking to your guns and saying, I want to be here. I'll do whatever it takes to make it.
Nice. I think it's a lot of luck. I feel like one of the luckiest people in the world. I've had an improbable and fantastic life in pretty much all the media. The only thing I haven't done is live television. So what? My name is Tom Moore. I started trying to be a lawyer, studied in that direction, realized this was not going to work out for me. Went to Yale Drama School, amazingly got in, have no idea why. Managed to get out of Yale, having met lots of extraordinary people, having become a director there. Very clearly, that was where it happened. Within 2 years, I had my first Broadway show, which never happens. That show happened to run for 8 years and had about 7 or 8 road companies along with it.
What show was that?
That was Grease. That was followed in quick succession by a couple of other Broadway shows, another musical, which none of you have heard about, called Over Here, but which was quite successful. And over the years, I've done about 8 or 10 Broadway shows. It was equally important to me to do resident theater. I developed a very strong relationship with Mark Taper here, Gordon Davidson. I'd actually started, one of my first jobs was as his assistant. I also started a long relationship with American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, but I also have worked at pretty much all, like Oz, pretty much all, and all of us actually, all of the resident theaters across the country. We came of age when that was such an important thing because it was just beginning to come into fruition. I felt I was burning out. I wanted to try the rest of the pie. And that's when I wanted to do some film and television. I was very lucky in the Broadway show that I did, Night Mother, with Kathy Bates and Ann Petoniak. Marcia Norman insisted that I be the director of the film. That film led to many things, but one thing was my first television show, which happened to be 30-something. And that led to many, many shows after that, some of which I enjoyed enormously, some of which were problematic. But I loved the process of film. I did that for a long, long time, mostly series, some long form. And then in constant search of reinvention, I decided to make a documentary, which I've been working on the last few years, which has been very exciting because it's completely new form. It's a little lonely, but it's great. And that kind of brings me to this point.
Paul?
I'm Paul Lazarus, and I'm going to be brief. I started in New York. I thought I was going to be a singer. It was a really bad idea. I was not a very good singer, a very light, soft voice, but somebody at college said, "You're not a singer, you're a director," and they got me a position with the Royal Shakespeare Company in England as an observer apprentice, and that cemented my desire to be a director. I didn't get a job in London because I didn't have the proper papers, so I came back to New York and spent about 10 years mostly directing new work. One of my great angsts is I've never been able to get a Broadway show yet, but I did a lot of shows, and one of the shows I did was a show called Personals, and you don't know the show probably, but the writers went on to create Friends, and they came out here earlier than I did, but they sort of said, "You should come out here," and I had no idea how to handle a camera, I had no interest in a camera. I thought I was a theater person, and that was 20 years ago, and I think I've directed about 40 series now. My first was L.A. Law, which I think we all did. We all did. And you know, there's so many.
Didn't L.A. Law get canceled 5 years ago?
L.A. Law is so far back, most people don't even remember. But
what?
L.A. what? Yeah, exactly. But I know among the shows of TV I've done are ones, you know, Friends, Everybody Loves Raymond, in the sitcom world, and I've done the single camera ones like Dream On and Samantha Who with Christina Applegate, and recently Better Off Ted, which nobody saw, and which I loved. The ones I love.
Apparently one person in the
one
audience.
person saw. 2, 3. The ones I love are the ones who never get continued for some reason. And then I also, one of the very few people, although I think I'm here with, I don't, have you guys ever done sitcoms? Yeah. So we're actually, this is a very rare thing. We're 3 TV directors who've done all forms, which is incredibly rare, because it's rare I'm on a panel with anybody who's done sitcom, single camera, and drama. And you know, I just did Pretty Little Liars, you know, so I do a lot of different shows. And I too have been working on a documentary, coincidentally, and just finished it and entered it into Sundance. And it's about the inventor Dean Kamen and his work to solve the water crisis around the world. And that's been a very difficult, challenging 3 years, but interesting. That's my story.
Great. Since we have the sort of unique pleasure of having the 3 of you have worked in all the different forms, and including stage, can you talk a little bit about how your process changes depending on the medium or the form?
The other side.
And we'll start with Paul.
I don't think my process changes, but the media require different responses. I always start from story and character, and that applies everywhere. But there are different things, obviously. I guess this is a room primarily full of actors, so theater, we have to reach out to a very large group of people and communicate what's going on in the story to the back wall of whatever size theater you're in. Camera work, you no longer have that burden because the camera's coming to you. And that's a very fundamental and different art, because instead of reaching out to make sure that you're communicating to everyone, you now can exist and let the camera capture what you're doing. And a lot of people make the mistake of reaching out to the camera and thus become oversized and kind of grotesque, or undersized in the theater, not reaching out enough. And I've experienced both with actors, and you really have to know how to calibrate that work, I think. So I think that's different. And when I work with actors, that's a different thing. But camera obviously is a different voice than a live stage. You get a different set of gears to work with. I find that very fun, but I find that the basic storytelling, actor, character-driven choices are very much the same.
Just to pick up on the storytelling, I think we all know in this room, that's it. It's storytelling. It doesn't matter what form you do. It doesn't matter how brilliant the shot. Do you know what I mean? If you're not telling the story, no one cares. And I think we all find it out over and over again as we throw out something that means a great deal to us technically and just doesn't serve the purpose. To me, the difference is in the stage, you're filling a frame that's very large. It's all about focus on that frame. So in stage, you're trying to find a way to that. With camera, it may end up large, but you're basically filling a camera lens. Do you know? So you're starting to fill that. And it's a way of creating focus and tension within each one of those frames. And I think that is, as Paul said, I think that's a wonderful description of the fact that whether you come to the camera or the camera comes to you, to describe it. I often can make actors crazy because I came out of the theater, so I'm used to watching, usually after you get out of the rehearsal room, from the edge of the stage or in the front rows, etc. But when I direct a scene in a film, I want to get up as close as I can. And sometimes they've had to move me back because that's what the camera's going to see. It's not going to see what I see 20 feet away. And it's not going to see what I see on the monitor, which we all fall into, because the monitor is obscuring it. And then all of a sudden you see it in a screening room and you go, oh my God, I didn't even see that happening. So I try to break that because I think we all fall into that hanging by the monitor. It's safe, it's scary, you know, to get up close to actors. Sometimes it's nice to have that freedom. But anyway, that's mine.
I think when I first came out here, I was doing a lot of sitcoms, and we were doing it out of the booth. And you want to tell an actor, and you always heard these directors, could you move it to the left a little bit? And I was the joke of the place because I had to run out onto the stage and talk to the actor face to face and said, could you move to the left a little bit? Because I did not like that disconnect. Because coming out of theater, I want to be there. I want to see who you are. I mean, and we're having a major thing at the Directors Guild, which I'm on the Western Council for, because they're trying to take casting away from, you know, but put it. I was just down in New Orleans shooting, and everything was virtual. And they had the Fincannons in Wilmington, North Carolina, having people put themselves on tape, sending them to New Orleans. And you're looking and saying, what, who? And I like working with actors. I think we all like working with actors. We get up there. The thing I want to say about the camera and the stage is I've had people come into audition and they audition, oh, I'm here, so I'm trying, you know. And you're like going, well, just speak up, you know, just talk. And they said, well, my acting teacher told me that it's a small frame and I have to be small. And I'm like going, no, you got, there's one thing about shouting, there's one thing about playing to the back of the house, and there's one thing just about talking and being yourself. There's, you know, and the big thing in television is time. I mean, what's great, and I'm sure Mandy Patinkin's watching this, and I'll be very, very clear with Mandy, but Mandy's a very classically trained actor, and I remember we gave a scene to Mandy on Friday, and he went home and he rehearsed it, 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 and he came in on Monday, and what he was doing, I was like, what is that? I said, this is what the scene is. I was there around Saturday afternoon. He said, you know, he's gone through it. And the process that we have in theater is we research and we go to some place, and a lot of times we don't think about our first things. We're on to our 10th or 20th in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and it's most of the time as directors we say, okay, you got that out of your system, now let's get back to what the play is really about. And in television, we don't have that. And so with Mandy, it was almost like, okay, Mandy, come on back. And even Mandy actually did an interview where he did say that he was a bit of a whatever back then, because he was a theater actor, and we have a process in theater that we don't have in television. I mean, it's sort of like Lenny Henry. I don't know if you know Lenny Henry from England. He's sort of the Eddie Murphy there, and he was saying, we do a series, we rehearse for a week, then we shoot for a week, then we rehearse for a week, and then we shoot for a week. And I said, we don't do that. I mean, it's like, here's a script, bang, do it. And a lot of times in television, for some of the minor roles, it's you're giving information, say your lines, and get out of the way. And there's a lack of respect for character, of I'm going to become somebody else. And a lot of times when we're casting, no, we're casting you. This is what we want. We don't want you to, go into, all these machinations. So I think the process of theater is a lot of time and a lot of, working and talking and thinking and doing that. And especially in television and even film sometimes, it's very spontaneous and it's got to be very present. And that's something I think we all should really talk about, because I think that's very important about, because I'm a theater director. I have to talk to you. I have to get in your face, like Tom says, and really get to know who you are before I can just say, bang.
I just want to pick up on that for a second, because as actors, and most of you actors, as directors, we both have incredibly difficult jobs. And I think one of the most important things is a mutual respect, and to try to make that facilitation as easy as possible. I have worked with most actors actually, who will go out of their way to help you, whether you're going to cross the line, so yeah, let's put the pills here. I have had a couple of people that do not care if you lose your day, if you go 3 hours overtime. They will simply do it, and some of them have had fairly successful careers. And it's really sad, because it hurts them, because then you don't have the time. It really hurts the other actors, because they don't have to do it. But it just sends you into a spiral, because then you're catching up for the rest of the day because of something like that. So I mean, I just think that's so important.
I want to stay on this, but I want to get a sense of, in the room, I meant to ask at the top, how many self-identify as actors? Show of hands. Self-identify as directors? Self-identify as hyphenates? Great, awesome. I didn't want us to make any assumptions of who was in the mix. So staying in this piece, are there attributes that you've seen that have enabled actors to be successful in stage that then trip them up in screen, or vice versa? Or sort of what are some tips to enable a smooth transition between the two? And that's for anyone.
The good actors, the really good actors? The really good actors, I find, adapt. They quickly feel the situation, they feel the space they're performing for, and they start to adapt. It's when an actor comes in over-prepared or overly set with what they're going to do that it's almost impossible to pull them back in time, for instance, if they're a stage actor. Whereas if they're open, it's just a natural instinct. You're having a conversation in a room and the other people are talking and you're yelling. Any actor is going to start feeling that. And it's the director's job to facilitate that happening.
I worked with Robert Downey Jr. on Ally McBeal, and he came to me and said, okay, Oz, and he gave me his ideas about the scene, and he said, okay, you tell me what you want me to do. And I mean, he was wide open for me to tell him anything. But what he said to me was so brilliant. I was like, no, let's do that. And actually, I thought it was so brilliant that David Kelly had never made me reshoot anything I'd done, but he made me reshoot that scene because he said it overweighted the whole episode because it was such a very strong scene that he had to pull it back down. But to your point, he was like wide open. You know, and I think there's other thing that happens is you've got 3 theater directors who've really worked and really studied and really gone through this. The problem with television sometimes, and especially actors who work with directors who just say, I can make pretty pictures. I mean, Sherman Hemsley once said to me, I like you, Oz, because you talk to me and you make me laugh. I get mad when a director says, do that thing you do. And you get a lot of actors who start getting very defensive and very protective of their space because they are talked to like that. And they don't have that. So they come in. I remember one actor, I was doing a film, and we did the film, and we got to a point where I said, okay, that's great. That was a great scene, great moment. I'd like to try something else. And he said, what? What? What do you want? And I said, no, he was very protective of what he had done, and it was good. And I said, I'd like you to try this other thing. And he went, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, and at that point, he said, I realized you were a director, so I could listen to you. And there's a lot of actors who will not listen to directors, and I find it a lot. You have to break, it's trust. It's the trust. You have to get that trust with the actor, and they say, okay, you're okay, I get it.
I mean, the only idea that's useful is one that's good enough to change the actor. Because if you don't have an idea that's strong enough to convince someone, it might not be a strong enough idea. So I find the really good actors are so available to those ideas because they can actually hear that it's a decent idea. You know, and that's critical. And the other thing is when they're so set, when an actor is so set that they can't be moved in any direction, that's going to be a virtually wooden performance because it's not even going to be incorporating the other actor, let alone the director. So those people I don't think I wouldn't call them good actors. You know, that preparation that's so solid that it can't be altered. So you hope that people can hear some suggestions. That thing about, and I think we're talking now TV primarily, that thing about listening and reacting is so true. The notion of coming in with such a solid plan that it's inalterable and I'm going to do it regardless, that means, you know, the door falls down and you're still doing exactly what I planned. That's probably really weak. But you know, Hal Prince once said, as a director, you never want the note you give, you want better. And I think that's what I strive is, I will give a note that I believe in, but I don't want that note. I want it to provoke a better response in the actor. And when you have an actor that does that, then it's exciting.
And I think it's a two-way street also. I think a director has to be able to come in, and for me, I have to listen to the actor speak the words before I can really finalize how I'm going to block a scene. And it's the same thing. I have to be open. I have to be able to say, wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that. I didn't hear it that way. Now let me adjust also. So I think it really is a two-way street.
It's also, just to expand on what Paul said in terms of you want the note to be something better, something different. You want the entire performance to be something better, something different. I think we all live as directors, live for that moment when the magic of acting, and when it's working, it is magical, lifts the piece out of your imagination and off the page. That is what we all strive for. And it's usually magical accidents that make something like that happen.
So staying on the topic of notes and sort of giving notes to actors, widening the circle and thinking about the notes that you get as directors from producers and other members of the creative team, can you talk about the collaborative process, stage versus screen, and how you like to manage or direct your role and the roles of the other players around that circle?
I want to jump into that just because it's something, this is one of my favorite phrases. Directing, we're all talking about television because basically we've all done longer form. But we've also done a lot of television, because that's what most of us, including actors, get to do if you're in Los Angeles. And some of it's been fantastic. But my theory is that everyone colludes in the idea that you're really running the show as the director. But in point of fact, you're one of the least powerful people in the room. But nobody goes there because they know you have something to offer. But in point of fact, the producer is obviously in charge of any show in television. The actors, if they're the series regulars, are making 1 billion times more than you are and will be there every week. And the DP is setting the tone of the show. Do you know what I mean? So you really have to get trust in those situations. Otherwise, why should they go with you? They'll look like they're doing what you want, but they won't, you know. I've also seen directors do just the opposite, come in and think they're going to rewrite the rules of a show. And it's suicidal, because then it'll be recut. And it'll be recut and be a mess. You know, whether any responsible director, you need to learn the rules of anything. Like all of LA Law, a lot of people criticized LA Law, those of you remember it, because of talking heads. But you had to learn how to do a master with a moving camera so that there was no such thing as a master. So it might start on a close-up over there, then move out and move in, motivated, not just arbitrary camera moves. And that was invaluable to me, because I saw the magic. Wow, you really can do that. With one shot, you can have a master, close-ups, a 2-shot, and a tracking shot. I mean, you can do it all.
And then one pop on the reverse and you're out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Or something to save you if you need to cut into another tape.
But I think the collaboration process is very interesting, because we have the network, we have the studio, we have the producers, and it's sometimes honestly like telephone. I mean, one person tells one person something, they tell something else, and then you have a writer who is really not a director. And there are some writers who are directors who sit there and they tell you, this is what the network told me they want. And you're looking at them saying, wait, you can't do that. And one of the things we're really trying to do is get directors to have some communication so they can hear what the studio or the network has to say, so we can find the language to tell the actors so that they are not the 4th person or the 5th person in the chain going, you want me to do what? And you can, as a director, say, well, I was told by somebody who was told by somebody else who was told by somebody else that they wanted that. You have totally lost trust, because they're looking at you like, oh, you really have me out here on my own. So as a director, you have to find your language, what you believe in, to pass those notes along. And I worked on one where I got one day, we're doing a moped being chased by a little Citroen through the streets, and it ends up with the moped going off and the guy looking like he tries to kill himself and going into the water. And one day I got a note, well, we want it funny. That's why we have these little things. The next day, the network had changed his mind. We want it to look dangerous. And I'm like going, okay, so you don't want a little Citroen? Well, do you think you could do both? That was the note that I got. And they said, well, could you maybe start it off funny and turn it dangerous? And I'm like going, okay. I mean, and then you have to figure out how to interpret that. And a lot of times, when they see something that they've told you to do this and you've done that, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I said, you know? And it's just something that we as directors have to learn. And I had a writer once say to me, I want to just be a director. I want to be just like you and just do directing. And I said, you're creating shows. I said, my job sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes is how to justify bad writing in television. And you have to help the actor get from one point to another point, and a lot of times it's difficult, but that's what we do as television directors, is saying, okay, and I love it when I want to tell TV directors sometimes when you sit there and say, I don't like this scene, and they get upset, and they say, what? You don't like my writing? And I'm like, you wrote this last week. I mean, I've worked with brilliant, brilliant writers who worked on a play for 2-3 years, and you give them a note, and they go, "That's interesting. Let me give me a couple days, and let me work it out." And in television, you don't have that, and you're like saying, "No, I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm trying to work with you." So the collaboration can be now. Don't get me wrong. There's some writers I think are brilliant, are phenomenal. David Kelly gave me a script on Picket Fences that I just read, and I said, "Oh my God, this is phenomenal." You know, I mean, there are some really great writers, and there's a lot of television with some really great writing going on now, and I think it's great. But
And the ellipses to you, Paul.
I'm not gonna fill that in. I was thinking back to your original question about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As the writer,
The difference between theater, the collaborator is typically the writer. The producers very rarely. There are producers in theater who are very forward, mostly writers. So all my experiences, particularly because I've mostly done new work, I've been with the writer, and I say the same thing. If I don't have an idea strong enough to convince a writer who's sat at a script for years to make a change, the idea can't be good enough. I mean, I really have come to believe that. If the idea is striking enough for the writer to go, "Oh my God, I have to try that," then I feel like I've succeeded. So that collaboration of theater usually tends to be the writer, and it tends to be, for me, very positive because I have great respect for the blank page and what people do to fill it out. And once you get that respect, it's easier to work with a writer because then you're not crapping on a lot of long, devoted work. You're actually trying to constructively make it better. In TV, that writer is the producer, and there are control freaks everywhere, but there are also people who want good ideas, and I find that I'm the guest, I'm the substitute teacher almost always, except if it's a pilot, but the substitute teacher has to learn the class, has to learn what's going on in that school, and try to teach as well as the regular teacher. And so I find that I want to learn as much as I can about the show and try to realize that vision that's really not mine. But every once in a while you get jazzed and you're a creative person and you go, "I really want to do this because I think it really will flower this script into something bigger, like the actor magic." And occasionally the producer doesn't want to do that. And you have those moments, and the few of you who saw Better Off Ted, I had one of those moments on a really great script called, it was a crazy premise of, it was a corporate satire, and there were censors all over the campus, and for some reason the censors don't see Afro-American people. They don't work. So, which was an incredibly daring premise, and it got further and further away from political correctness, and I thought, they'll never do this on TV. And then they did, and they didn't change a word, and I desperately wanted to do a shot where Malcolm, the Afro-American character, climbed up very high and got his face right in the censor, because I wanted the audience to get that his skin color wasn't working on the censor. And I thought, if I could do that, the whole episode will be better. And the producers thought, "Do you really need that shot?" And I went, "I want you to trust me on this one. I know it's going to take 45 minutes, and I want you to go with me on this one, and I will make it up. We will end the day on time." And he caved, and we did it. It took an hour and 15 minutes, not 45. And when he saw the shot on the monitor, he looked at me and went, "You're right. You're absolutely right. And it's funny." But you can lose a job over those kinds of things. And I choose to do them when they're important to me.
I'd like to say something I've told actors, especially in television, that part of the collaboration, and writers truly appreciate it, when you sit there and you put something extra into a character, where you sit there, because a lot of times writers are watching what you do in that episode to figure out where they're going to take you in the future. So part of the collaboration is very funny because it's almost, for instance, I did an episode of The Practice, and guy comes in, he's signed for 2 episodes, and he walks into the lawyer's office with a head in a bag. And it's a great episode. And he walked in, and he gets all the lawyers, and I went out on a date with this woman last night. I went to bed, I got up in the morning, and her head was in the bag in my trunk. I don't know how it got there. And I'm like, I went to David Kelly and I said, did he kill this woman? And David said, I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. So I went to the actor and I said, how would you like to be on this show for a long time? And he said, what? I said, you did not kill her. And so he did that. He played it just like that. He did not kill this woman. 9 episodes later. Because they're looking to you. They're looking to us. They're looking to see, because a lot of times they haven't, or they're all of a sudden, and I believe in doing the words. I'm not sitting here trying to mess with any writer's words, but I'm trying to figure out how I enhance so that they can see what they've got, and so they can say, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so really have a little magic. I can write for that. And that's part of our jobs. I mean, the actor's job, the director's job is to just give it that little extra, spice.
The structure of this question may set us up to sort of talk stage versus screen, but you've talked a little bit about the process of being the substitute teacher, right? And the idea of work for hire versus self-motivated or self-generated projects. Can you talk about how your process has changed, either sort of as work for hire on TV, or now with the two of you working on documentaries, or in stage? So sort of work for hire versus self-generating, wanting to really direct a stage show or something like that, for any of you.
It took me my entire career. I keep not wanting to do this. It took me my entire career to reach the point where I actually generated something on my own. I spoke of luck. Everything came to me for literally the first several decades. This documentary is the first thing I generated, and it's nearly killed me. Because it's yours, and you have to follow it through, and you have to keep believing in it strong enough to keep it going. You all know that with projects, and that's a tough one. But the stage I still was work for hire. It came to me, even the features, they came to me.
Oz or Paul?
I actually have the opposite side of the spectrum because almost nothing comes to me. And I've self-generated practically everything I've ever done in my entire career.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, except for TV, because TV is a job, and you are, the for hire is a set of parameters. You didn't create the show, you didn't write the script, typically, as a director. You are, again, the substitute teacher. It's about realizing somebody else's vision. I try to do that to the most creative end that I can do it. I get in trouble all the time because I want to help. It's a big problem to want to help writers in television because I actually noticed that on a series like Psych, that every episode has the MacGuffin revealed in the final episode except mine. Is that a problem, I say to the writers? They say, just shoot it. And I just shoot it, and then in editorial they go, wait a minute, why is the MacGuffin in the third scene prior to the ending? On the first day of prep, I called you to warn you, but the $100,000 you're about to spend that I tried to save you, you will now spend. It's a medium for hire. There's a lot of desire for people to make the machine run smoothly, happily, and safely. And if you are someone who cares, I think all three of the people on this panel tend to be people who care, and I think we probably get into trouble because
I think we all get into trouble. I think we're incredibly passionate about doing it. Also, if I can pay a compliment to stage directors, you haven't gotten there by accident. You can get somewhere in television by accident. You cannot get a stage piece by accident. It doesn't happen. You've gotten there because of a series of steps. My problem has always been, I know when a scene is not working. I may not have the answer, but I know it's not working. And I know if we sail through that, just like you said, they're going to find it out later. They don't know it, but they're going to. And I just would like to throw in one more thing. It's the people in the middle that get in your way, much more than the producers. Producers are usually incredibly smart people, or they wouldn't be where they are. It's the people that are representing them on the set that really can cause problems for both the actor and the director, because then the whole message gets muddied. And I have several times just pushed through what they had to say, because I knew what I was doing the producer was going to like, and it's always tended to work out. But it's really painful at the moment it's happening.
You know, it's funny, but it's the people in the middle that cause problems in theater also. No, I mean, Joe Papp, when I was doing For Color Girls, gave me an idea, and I love Joe, don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the most brilliant producers I ever worked with, and he really knew how to say something, do something. He just was not a director. I mean, there were certain things, and he gave me an idea, and I went and tried it. And it was horrible. And I just said, oh my God, I got to change it. And he was out of town. And all those mid-level people said, you can't touch it until he comes back and sees it. And I'm like going, I cannot put the actresses through this for another 2 days. You know, I mean, I can't put myself through it. So I changed it. And when Joe came back, I walked up and said, Joe, I tried what you wanted and it didn't work. So I tried something else. And he looked at me and he said, did it work? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, okay. I mean, I think, you know, and I also want to, you know, when I talk about writers, I also want to say a lot of times writers are getting beat up. You know, they're really getting beat up. And as directors, we're really trying to help to interpret these notes that we get from the networks. And, you know, I remember I was speaking to AFI once, and they said, what do you think we should do to get our careers at? I said, I think you all should drop out of AFI and go to Harvard Business School or Harvard Law School, and then you can pick the directors and the writers and the actors, and pick yourself to direct, because there's a lot of bean counters out here, and a lot of bean counters have a lot of power, and a lot of, I think, really smart writers don't have enough power to, you know, it's about numbers. This is a numbers game we're playing, you know. A 1.5 is scary for some people, you know, and it's, well, we need this, we need that, we need this to make it work. There's formulas out there, and the problem is formulas are meant to be broken. And a lot of times that's what we do, is saying, wait a second, let's try this. And then all of a sudden, a new formula is created, and everybody says, okay, let's do that formula now. And as opposed to what we do is we create. And when we get to really work with the writers, we have a lot of fun. But when we have to sit there and try to navigate is, I think, where a lot of problems come.
So I imagine that was only slightly tongue-in-cheek to go to Harvard Business School. But were you to advise yourself, right? I said slightly. Right? But were you to advise yourself as an early career director in today's climate, what would you say to them?
Make stuff.
As an early career director?
As an early director.
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and I think people sit around and talk about things instead of making stuff. And you can get your camcorder and make a short movie and learn and do something that might go viral. Or you can sit around and talk about stuff. I think you need to make stuff, and particularly in early career, anything, talking about it is not as good as taking any lessons that improve your craft, actors, voice, dance, everything, and directors and making things. You know, it's just about doing, because you're going to meet that one actor who becomes Brad Pitt while you're making stuff, and you're going to make something that is 2 minutes worth of funny that gets seen by 1 million people, but mostly you're going to learn, and in the learning, you're already ahead. You know, I think, you know, luck thing. I'm down on the luck thing, because I think that Tom is being modest about luck. It's not luck. It's preparation meets opportunity, because this is a brilliant director who didn't luck into anything. And he didn't luck into making Grease. maybe, you know, it was,
Yes, he
it was,
did.
maybe,
Just me on this
it was,
one.
it was fortunate that it became the hit that it did. But I don't think he lucked out that much. I think that he was prepared and he had an opportunity and he took great advantage of that opportunity.
I was told once, years ago, you want to be a director, you tell everybody you're a director. And somebody's going to believe you. At which point, your talent takes over. So you can call it luck, but it's really putting yourself out as who you are. You know, I think with YouTube, with all the internet that's going on, with the cameras, I mean, Black Swan was, you know, all the subway stuff was shot on a 7D. You know, I mean, you can afford the equipment, you can afford this. You've got writer friends. It's, you know, I mean, back in my day, it was make sure you still get out there so you can meet the actors who basically are going to have the power to hire you in television in 10, 15 years, because those are the people who have the power. Friends, producers you worked with, you know, it's creating your community, and as your community moves up, you move up. But you've got to do. You constantly have to do. You've got to create. And a lot of times it really doesn't have to be good. It just has to be out there. So that you know, because then you learn. And I mean, how many, you know, Shakespeare wrote a play every 6 months and they said, okay, let's go to the next one, let's go to the next one. And he grew and he grew and he grew. If you sit there with the same play for 10 years, you're not going to grow because you're going to keep making the same mistakes. And that, with actors, with directors, is what is meant by do.
Work begets work. The cliche, it's just the truth. It's not going to happen with your theorizing. It's not going to happen with your conceptualizing. We all just have to do it. You have no idea what's going to lead to point B. Do you know the things that we think are the least important things we have done led to something extraordinary, and vice versa. The things we thought were going to lead us to huge success and joy led to complete misery and desolation. You know, and that's, I mean, I find, having reached this point, one of the great things about being older is the pleasure in seeing the arc. Not only your arc, but all the people around you. Because you can say, oh, that's what it is. People talk about a career. I don't think a career exists until it's over. Then you go, oh, that was the career. Because then you see how it went. I think it's just a matter of seeking out the next thing. And if you keep searching for the things you're passionate about, you know, I think you reach. Now, we all don't get all the time to do the things we're passionate about. But you have to keep it in mind that this is what you desire. This is what you want. Otherwise, I think you get lost, you know, and then you become, either as an actor or as a director, a hack, you know, because then you just start creating what other people want, you know. And I think most of you are in here, if you spent this time to come here to just experience something new, you know, and like all of us, I am constantly out wanting to have new adventure, you know, because that's what life is. And that's what art is. And you can't create, well, now I'm getting a little too philosophical, but you cannot create art without having explored life. It cannot be done.
I am a commissioner for the city of Los Angeles for historical sites and landmarks. I mean, for me, I'm always trying, I'm out there. I've got doctors and lawyers who are my best friends. And I'm talking about Alzheimer's treatments and things like that. These are the things that, you know, what I tell writers, you know, young writers. I said, go to law school, do something that you can write about, that you can take from, because it's about specifics. What we do is we create specifics that enhances the writing, that enhances the directing, that enhances everything. People want to see specifics. They don't want to see boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back again. They want the specifics of those characters, which is what you do, which is what we do, and we want to say, wow. And what writers, and I know on television, writers, you know, they love it when they say, wow, you know, I know I wrote that, but you added something, you added a specific. And that's what we do, and that's what you have to keep doing.
Earlier, when you were talking about the process, sort of the core attribute for successful actors transitioning was, and also for directors, was story and character, starting there. But going back when you transitioned from stage to screen, how did you adapt around the technical needs, the technical aspects of that world?
I'd like to speak to that because this is one of the most generous industries in the world. And there is somebody on that crew or in charge of that crew that will do anything to help you. And I have only met one crew in my entire career that was not the case. And I simply demanded that the assistant either is going to go or I'm going, because I didn't want that negativity around me as I was working. But they will. I mean, I've had DPs, in fact, you have to do, and I'm sure you guys have had this experience, you have to beg the DP, tell me how long this is going to take to light. I know you'll do it for me, but don't say go ahead if it's going to take us 2 hours, because we'll lose the day. But they'll go that way. The only thing that will sink you, and I think it's true of an actor too, is if you act like you know something and you don't. So I am very quick to say I don't know. I try to learn as much as I can. Like many of us, you pick up the lingo from one meeting to take into the next. So it sounds like you know what you're doing. Lenses, oh, got that from that meeting. Okay, I'm ready for you now. You know, and you do that, but at the same time, you're picking up. But I'm not going to say, when I first started, I wouldn't say what lens to use. I know now, but I wouldn't say it then because I didn't know. So I counted on people who knew best, and then you find out and you slowly learn. But they're extraordinary out here in that way, the technical people. It moves me.
I really want to add to that because when I was doing a shot on Scarecrow and Mrs. King years ago, and I set the camera, I said, this is where I want, this is the scene, but boom. And I walk away and they set the camera and I look at it and they said, oh, that's an ugly shot. And I said, but I made a decision. And I'm going to stand by this decision. And I watched the DP, I watched the set people, I watched them adjust it to make it work. What I see sometimes is when you try to micromanage or you keep changing your minds, your crews will back off and say, okay, when you figure out what you're doing, I'll chime in or I'll just do it.
If you hear a crew calling a director boss, you know he has lost their trust. And that's the truth, because it means that they no longer are thinking of him as an individual. It's the guy they have to tolerate for this experience. And if boss and chief.
But it's staying open. But I agree with it. For me, when I did my first TV, I did this thing for the jazz saxophone quartet, the World Saxophone Quartet, 4 saxophones, and they were improvising, and I was lost. It was my first TV, and we sat down at a production meeting, and they said, so Oz, do you want a star filter? And I said, of course. Anything they said, I said, yes, yeah, that would be great, you know, because I had no idea. And Tom knows exactly what I'm talking about. and then you got up there, and I'm like going, and then I had 4 saxophone players, and they were all like, I said, guys, could you tell me who's going to go? Yo, you're getting into our vibe. No, we don't know what's going to happen. I said, okay. Whoever's going to start the solo, could you make a really big move so I know what camera to go to? Oh, yeah, we could do that.
So funny. You know, just to throw it back to actors too. Actors get caught between the middle so often. I know the first sitcom I ever did, thank you, was Cheers, and I did it in one of the later years of Cheers, and the cast just wanted to go home. They were used to working with Jim Burrows and Fastest Man on Earth, and you know, they wanted to get out of there. Well, I was having trouble with that because it was my first sitcom, and I was trying to figure out the sitcom pattern of cameras. But not only I was having trouble, the guest actors had no idea what they were going to do. Like Georgia Brown, who some of you may know of her, but was an extraordinary English actress. And she couldn't get enough time to rehearse, to have any idea where she was supposed to go, what she was supposed to do, you know. Anyway, I feel sad for actors sometimes.
Switching gears slightly to the business side and crafting a career, can you talk about your relationships with managers and agents and how you sort of think through your career and next steps?
Whoa.
Wow.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's an ongoing process.
I have no answer for that.
From cradle to death.
Yeah. I've had so many different agents and managers in my life, and most often, again, the work is self-generated, and agents answer the phone, sometimes well, sometimes badly. I've had some help. But mostly I've found that agents and managers are really great when you are doing very well, and they are not so great when you are not doing well. And I don't know, other than that, managing agents and managers, I've been very bad at it, but I'm good at generating work or doing work. So I find that the agents and managers keep up with me.
I think that's really, I mean, it's self-generating. You have to sit there and say, they work for you, and you've got to stay on it, because if you don't, agents may have 20, 30, 40 people, and there's sometimes you get people who are just throwing it up against the wall, see what sticks, and somebody will say, well, I don't like Tom. Oh, okay, I got somebody else for you. I mean, and that's something that you constantly...
I like the way Paul uses me better than the way you use me.
But no, I mean, and that's the problem with some of the bigger agencies. I think some of the bigger agencies have also gotten so corporate. You know, I mean, it's getting scary. I actually like my team. You know, I've got a manager and I've got an agent. And I actually asked my lawyer, what do you think about a manager? And she said, 10 years ago, I'd say, you don't need a manager. She said, now, I don't have any successful client who hasn't had a manager for 10, 15 years, which is very interesting. I think you're what we do, we're constantly in flux. You're only as good as your last job. I mean, you've heard that. I think it's very true. And the longer you do television or longer you do anything, they'll say, you know, and because everybody now, the network, the studio, everybody has a hand in choosing the director. And even the actor has a hand in choosing the director. And if you have one person in that line that says, you know, 10 years ago, Oz did this shot that I really didn't like. And you will have a lot of people, oh, well, let's find somebody else. And I mean, everybody makes a mistake, you know, that's what you do. And I remember the shot. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't. But, you know, and this is really because it's becoming such a corporate. I was once with was Bob Evans, that was the head of Paramount years ago, right? It was Bob, and we were doing an interview with him, and I listened to this young person ask him these questions, and he said, "Okay, Mr. Evans, thank you very much." And I said, "Stop! Wait a second, guys. We're sitting in Bob Evans' bedroom interviewing him. Can I ask a question?" And I asked him a question. I said, "What's the difference between Paramount now and Paramount when you ran it?" And he said something very interesting. He said, I had 3 employees and 100 writers, directors, actors under contract. He said, today, you've got 300 to 400 employees and 1, 2, or 3 directors on contract. He said, that's where the business has gone, and I think it really says a lot. You know, it's something you got to be aware of.
One of you, I wanted to stay. I was going to go someplace with that, sort of about where the industry has changed, but I want to stay in this just for a little bit longer if we can. When you said stay on it, stay in it as directors, and if it's self-generated, right, sort of using language we used earlier, work for hire, but you're saying it's self-generated. How do you stay in the mix? How do you get that next gig? If it's not the agent or the manager necessarily booking it, how do you, other than doing great work, how do you stay in the mix?
Well, for me, that's been based on relationships. If there's a showrunner who I've done 4 to 6 series with, and they finally come back with a new series,
then they're likely to call me up for a job. Or there's a director that I've worked with, and he's experienced my work, and he'll bring me in. I don't think it's the new person that I'm getting the job from. I think it's the person I've already worked with. So after 20 years of doing this, it tends to be people I have experience working with me, I would think. So staying in it, it's not about networking new contacts so much as, I mean, I have people I have a lot of respect for. The Jeff Greensteins, Bob Cushels of the world, who go from show to show to show. And those are the people that bring me in, I guess. So that's where I get the work from. So self-generated means, in this case, I did some work with them, they liked it, they want me back.
I think that it depends on where you are in your career. I think in the beginning, it was self-generating, was hanging out and meeting the people and getting to know and getting comfortable, because people hire people they're comfortable with. You know, you don't hire a stranger. You don't hire, you know, you hire somebody, oh, you know, I've worked with you, I know you, I've talked to you. It's staying out. I think in Hollywood especially, you know, I tell my wife, you know, when I walk out in the morning until I come home at night, I'm on. You know, you're working, you're sitting there self-generating contacts, self-generating materials, talking, working, thinking, being out there. I mean, I don't know how many lunches did I take, you know, and just getting around so that people began to know you. When I was like at Hill Street, just hanging on the set, so people started to get comfortable with you. You know, I mean, we're concerned about some of these programs where we're going to put you on this show for a little bit, and this show for a little bit, and this show for a little bit, and this show. Nobody gets comfortable with you. It's when you stay on a show for a while that people say, oh, I believe in you. I think you can do something, as opposed to throwing all these resumes out, because I think my first job at Arena Stage was throwing out resumes that people that sent in. You go, oh, don't know them, boom. Just trash everything that we don't know, you know, and you've got to be careful about doing it that way. But when people, it's like a young woman came to me and said, I want to be a director. And I said, okay. And would you help me be a director? I said, okay, do you have a script you've written? Do you have a film you've shot? Do you have something that I can talk about? And she was really looking good, I will say that. And I said, the only thing you walked into my office with that's interesting is the way you look. And you got to be careful about that, because if you had come in with a film, an idea, or something, I would have just gone straight there. You know, that's what this is about. That's what we say, generate, do something, so that I have something to react to. So I think as the older you get, things change in how we get jobs. But when you're younger, it's just, and even now, I think sometimes I'm still out there. I'm hanging out with Tom. I'm hanging out with Paul, you know, hoping that they might be able to get me a job someday.
That's not true, because Oz is too competitive for that. I mean, in all respect, I mean, it's amazing how many different kinds of things Oz does. I mean, I think, you know, he's with the DGA, he's on the SDC, he's working city council. That's impressive, do you know what I mean? And again, it's a matter of embracing life and going after it. Agents and managers, what they do for you most is get you in the door, and that's invaluable, because maybe there's a way to do it on your own, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's coming up the pike. And they have relationships too. So their relationships are half the time how you get in to see something. You know, I've been with some of the most powerful agents, and I've been with less powerful agents. It's easier with the more powerful agents, you know, because they just get you indoors. But they never get you jobs. It's up to you to get the job. Do you know? You have to go in and make it happen.
I want to ask about the mentor relationship. Have there been strong mentors that you've worked with, and sort of what lessons have you gleaned from them? Or the reverse, have there been strong mentees that you've learned from, and maybe share an anecdote about those?
You know, I think, you know, for me, I think Lloyd Richards was a very strong mentor for me. Joseph Papp was a very strong mentor for me. When I was stage managing, I think one of the best lessons I got was Gilbert Moses, who had directed Ain't Supposed to Die, and we were doing Taking Him as Janie, which I was stage managing. And, you know, I said to Gilbert, I want to be your assistant. And Gilbert looked at me and says, I don't want anybody who doesn't know more than me, because I want somebody who has ideas I can steal, because it's always going to say directed by. I said, well, can I stage manage for you? Yeah, as long as you're useful, yeah, you can do that. But working with him was real interesting, because I remember when he left, we were at Lincoln Center, he went away for about a week or so, he came back, and he got very upset with me. He said, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean? He said, the play looks exactly like I left it. And I said, but isn't that my job? He said, no, your job is to keep it alive. And so he came back about a week later. Sam McMurray was in the play, and Sam was saying, Oz, I'm having a problem. So I sat with Sam, and we worked on it, you know, because he's, you know, like Gilbert said, the play is going, it's growing, it's not just stagnant. And so I worked with Sam, and the best compliment I got was Gilbert came back a week later, and he went up to Sam, oh my God, Sam, you've grown. And he never said anything to me, but I knew that I had done my job. So, you know, that was a great mentor for me. You know, I think you have mentors that, you know, Joe Papp just was a wonderful mentor. You know, Lloyd Richards just, you know, he would say, Oz, you're a very, very tall, imposing man. When you get mad, people get scared and they shut down. I said, okay.
Mentor. I've been very fortunate that I learned a lot about theater from Stephen Sondheim. So that's my biggest mentor. And I've done 4 pieces with him, and that's probably the biggest influence on me from the theater, and it's certainly in new musical theater. But I think when I think about mentors, there's always been artists that I've collaborated with who've dropped these incredible, joyous bombs on me, like Florence Henderson. No, wait a minute. Who is the wonderful ass Circle Rep actress with the long blonde hair? Florence is the right. It's so long ago. Once told me over dinner, I've been fired on a play. Actually, I was very depressed, and she took me out and said, the play was in deep trouble and needed more than my help, so it wasn't that bad that I got fired. But I did get fired, and she took me out and she said, Paul, you're so. I was very young in my career. This is before I even moved to L.A. And she said, you're very masculine in your approach to art. I said, what does that mean? She said, well, you want to have all the ideas, and you want to give people, and you want to go into them, but you need to develop and this is cliche, feminine, masculine term, but I'll live with it for a second. You need to take in ideas better, and it'll really help you if you can hear other ideas and use them. And I tell you, to this day, I remember that conversation, and it put me on a different path as an artist, that conversation. And it has helped me enormously. And this was a big gift. And I think mentors in my life have been those moments when people just say that thing to you that goes, oh my God. It completely rejiggered my life as an artist, that moment.
I think everyone I've worked with has been a mentor in some way, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. But I think you are changed with every project that you do, because the intensity with which you work with people is so profound that I don't think you can come away with it either uninspired or unscathed. And I think both happen, you know. So, but there have been major theater directors, whether it be Bill Ball or Gordon Davidson, you know, or major actors like Geraldine Fitzgerald, you know, or Kathy Bates, or, you know, any of the Redgrave girls. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, you just absorb from them because they inspire you.
On the surprising piece, is there a story from your directing career that you'd love to share, either something that really surprised you or something that really disappointed you? Tom does.
It's all surprised me. You know, the fact that I'm here and had this career, it surprises me. And I mean, I don't say that modestly, although I deeply appreciate what you say. But it does surprise me. I just was moving along. You know, I wasn't the one expected to have the big career, and I ended up having it. And you know, I think the thing that I offered to it was that it didn't make me satisfied. It simply led to the next challenge, you know, as I figured that out. But I go back to the things that you don't expect, like Greece. You know, everyone expected to be a complete failure, and we were being told by everyone in the 2 weeks before it opened that it was going down, and you know, and of course it didn't. But it's you know, but then on the other hand, I thought something I did called Frankenstein, which none of you, I'm sure, saw, but was one of the favorite things I ever directed in my life. It summed up everything I love in the theater and got incredible response from Michael Bennett and all kinds of things. But anyway, the critics didn't like it, and the producers shut it down as a tax write-off. You know, those things change you. You know, but those are some of the great disappointments and some of the great highs. I just recently did a thing at my undergraduate alma mater where I had to go speak about careers. I chose, rather than going from the triumphs, and I think this shocked everybody, I went from one failure to the next failure and how that led to what ultimately happened. Because most of our lives there is no linear line up. And I'm sure all of you know it. You know, that may happen up till 18 if you happen to be beautiful or the football star. But after that, it's going to be a rocky road. And you're just trying to stay on the uphill climb. You know, and anyway.
A favorite story, surprise, disappointment, Sir Paul?
There's so many. You know, I mean, I think our lives, I think I go day to day. And I surprise myself, and I have my disappointments, and you know, you know, pick a day, and I'll tell you what happened. That was surprising to me. But you know, I'll just tell a real quick story because this is something that has to do with actors. You know, I remember years ago thinking, you know, I had an assistant who said, Oz, what is it that you talk to actors or you don't say anything? You like do this, and I sort of said, and they go off and they do it, and it's like, wow, what is that? And I said, you know, well, maybe it's telepathy. I just have a way of talking, you know, and I finally realized that a lot of times what you're really saying to an actor when you're like, is like they say, oh, yep, got it. I mean, because a lot of times actors already know when they're bullshitting. And you know, and for me, and I remember a script supervisor saying, Oz, you gave the most interesting direction I have ever heard anybody give. And this actor who you had just hired, you didn't know, was a small part. He came up to us and he said, well, how was I? And she says, no, not, and I don't recommend you doing this to anybody. But I said, well, you sucked. And he looked at me and he said,
no, don't do that to anybody.
and he literally said, okay, I got it. And she said he went out there and he just was brilliant right after that. And a lot of times I think you guys know what you got to do. And a lot of times you just want to be challenged to say, just do it. And don't come up and ask me some stupid question that you already know the answer to. And so I realized it's not telepathy. That was a major surprise in my life. It was not my genius. It was just being able to look at an actor going, yeah, that's it. And they're like, oh. And honestly, I found it happen to me. I think Dennis Smith, when he was DPing on, he looked at me and said, I blocked the scene, and he looked at me and said, that's the best you can do? And I was like, oh, and I took my jacket off and I rolled and I said, oh, you're going to go there. And so I got up there and he looked, okay, yeah, that's better. But I think we all have a lot in us. And I think that was one of the biggest realizations that I had, is we have it in us, and it's a lot of times it's not even being directed out of it, it's just do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
No, I think I agree with it. Everything surprises me. My 7-year-old daughter constantly surprises me. And I don't think I get more surprised than that in anything I do than my 7-year-old daughter. But okay, so one story, because that's what we're here. So Angela Lansbury is a remarkable person and been very kind to me over the years. And the first time I worked with her was 100 years ago. And she was doing one song. And the song was Send into Class because she had never sung it. And I thought, gee, I wonder if I could persuade Stephen Sondheim to accompany her. And it worked out. And here's the surprise part. The surprise part was that you would think that they would get together one time, and that would be it. And Angela Lansbury demanded 8 separate rehearsals with Stephen Sondheim playing because she wanted it right. And what surprises me, and shouldn't surprise you, is that people who are Angela Lansbury work that hard. They don't go out there and be Angela Lansbury. They are Angela Lansbury because they demand 8 rehearsals for one song. There wasn't a song in the evening that had 8 rehearsals, except for Angela Lansbury singing Send in the Class. That surprises me. And what's great about that is it affirms everything I believe in. People who get there, for the most part, work that hard. It's not accidental. Yes, they are the beauties and the football captains. They have that thing for a little while. But most people work that damn hard.
You know, who doesn't love Lucille Ball? But one of the great stories I love is hearing how she used to prepare. You know, Vita Vita Vegemin, every beat of it had been worked out to the nth degree. There was no chance in that. It was all calculated, and therefore it became incredibly free. And I think that's a good thing for a lot of actors, because you can't reach comedy without that sort of precision. You just can't do it. You have to have it so precise that you can then move away from it. It's just there. But I just love that story, because you think when you see it that it was just this wacky, fabulous comedian.
I got another Lucille Ball story, because I was doing Alice, and I went to the writers and I said, this scene's not working. And they said, we worked with Lucille Ball. And Lucy used to tell us, stop. Stop rewriting, give it to the actors, and let us work it. Let us find what you wrote. Trust your words and walk away. And I think it was really great that she said that, because that's what they were able to do. A lot of times now, things get rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten to the point where the actor gets lost, the director gets lost, and it's the writers panicking, and you're like, sometimes just trust yourself.
Yeah, if I could throw this back to your question about change, that's one of the biggest changes ever. Because by the time we came into the business, they used to do this a lot. So when you see in sitcoms, you know, the Riches and all of those extraordinary people, they would work on something. Now, basically, if you do sitcoms as a director, your job is simply to stage the jokes so the writers can come in and pick which ones they want. You know, now you're paid incredibly well for it, but that's what it is. It's a completely, to me, that's a completely different thing than directing. It's simply, okay, we can stage that, you can see it, you can choose.
And to close, this will be our last question. Is there a dream project of something you really wanted to direct that you've yet to do?
That we've yet to do. I said
which one?
Yeah. Oh, I said earlier, I still am living to do an original musical on Broadway. One that I've turned several down because I didn't like them, but I would like to do one I believe in.
I can't answer that because it's unknown. Because I won't know what it is until it shows up, you know?
Ditto.
You know? So that leaves you with one more question.
What's your one wish for the performing arts community of Greater Los Angeles?
I thought about this. I just want to jump in here because this may not be a popular answer, but I want Los Angeles to assume the same standards of excellence that they will judge themselves by, that we know exist in certain other places. You know, it's an industry out here that is incredibly blessed for so many reasons, but so often simply because beauty and ease win the day. That's great. More power to you. But I just wish there was that standard that makes us all want to go and see something in New York or go to London.
Well, I hate to follow that up. No. I think for the theater community, being on the board of stage directors and choreographers, one of the problems we have in policing theater out here is there's so many vanity projects. And I think with so many vanity projects, it dilutes a lot because the excellence isn't there, it's about me. You know, I was in a panel and this woman sat there and she spent like 5 minutes talking about, I'm a director, I'm an actress, I'm a writer, I'm doing this, somebody from the panel stopped her and said, so this play that you're doing, what's the name of it? You know, but I do think, I mean, what Tom is saying, it's about excellence. And I think for me, the thing that hurts me the most about theater here is when I'm in New York doing a television series, if you have an actor, no matter where he is, if he has an 8 o'clock performance, we have to get him out by 6:37 so he can make his half hour. It was years ago, it was at the Taper, that they had an opening that they had to cancel because the actress was doing a television series, a show, and an episode, and we can't get her out that morning they said we won't be able to get her out tonight. Wow. I mean, I think there's a lack of respect for where sometimes television gets their best talent from. It's where we get to work and try things. You know, there's a lot of fabulous theater going on, but we're constantly, my wife does not like me doing theater in LA because I have to have the red cast, the blue cast, and the green cast in case somebody gets hired. And I ended up going on stage because it was like one person had a show in Seattle, another one got a sitcom. I didn't want, and then it was sort of like, okay, I'll do it. No, I didn't use the script. I made it, but then I got mad at the other actors because they were like starting to play to themselves, and I'm like, yo, wait a second. I'm here. Because they were afraid I was going to drop a line. I'm like, help me out, guys. But
I have one wish is that we would not consider 39 seats a sellout in LA.
Tom, I think you.
Well, I was actually quite intrigued by your questions when I looked them over. And one of the things that intrigued me was how do you choose in the vast city of LA with so much activity what to see? There is great stuff happening in the city, as we all know when we find them. But finding them may be one of the most difficult things in the world. And quite frankly, I've reached the point, if I don't get a recommendation for 3 people, I don't go. Because you have to make your choices, and it's just tough. And I don't know how LA, any more than it handles its traffic, how we deal with that. Because there are great things happening, and I know I miss a lot of them because I'm not there. I mean, I was astounded at the Ovation Awards one year when I did a presentation, just how much activity there is in LA. It's infinite.
So with that, I encourage you to use the power of your word and tell your friends to go see things that are great. Please join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.